Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Archives of American Art's first virtual event, Unboxed Lunch. Before we get started, I want you to know that this is being recorded. My name is Nora, and we're thrilled you're joining us for lunch, which I'm enjoying here in the Archives Washington, D.C. office on this snowy day. The star of the show, Josh T Franco, the Archives National Collector, is just down the hall in his office. Today's event is all about the collection of woodworker Emil Milan, which Josh will be diving into with you all in just a few minutes. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. At any time during the webinar, you can submit your questions for Josh, which I will read to him as he uncovers materials from the collection. To submit a question, simply type it into the Q&A at the bottom right of your screen. We will address as many questions as time allows, and you'll find information about how to submit more questions in the Q&A at the end of the presentation. And without further ado, I'd like to now introduce Josh T Franco, National Collector at the Archives of American Art.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Nora. I'm Josh Franco, your National Collector at the Archives. Thanks for coming to our first Unboxed Lunch. So a little bit about terminology to orient you. Unboxing and reboxing are terms we use a lot. For me, on the curatorial team, it's the moment when a collection comes in, is shipped in normal ground shipping boxes, and the first thing to do is to move all of the papers over to one of these nice acid-free archival boxes. Then this is what papers live in our very large storage collections here in DC. So that's what unboxing and reboxing is. Today, I'm really happy to be in the process of reboxing here in my office the papers of Emil Milan, a foundational sort of pivotal woodworker, not only for the forms he created as a wood carver, but also for the legacy of teaching through the Peters Valley Craft Center that he leaves behind. His influence on the craft world and wood carving world is quite significant. So I just want to jump in. I think I'm going to let the materials tell you the bio of Milan himself. And yeah, I want to give you the experience of what I get to do all the time, discovering things for the first time as an art historian in my process of assessing and acquiring papers. So we'll start not at the total beginning. There's some material from Emil Milan's high school days, which is great. But I want to start from his World War II times. He was a veteran of World War II. And I have to say, so this collection came in beautifully organized by the Emil Milan Research Project Group. These labels are not things the archive has done. This is what the donors have done. So this included some photographs from the World War II time, and I'll show you those while I read this note to give you some context of who Milan is. Do a lot of leaning here. All right, so this is a black and white photo. Milan's battalion landed on Omaha Beach the same week as D-Day and followed the First Army into Germany, where they performed checkpoint and guard duty for the remainder of the war. He was honorably discharged in November 45. And this is where things turn artistic. The GI Bill provided to those who served paid for 5 years of study at the Art Student League of New York, where Milan studied. And these photos were generously donated to the project by Milan's nephew, George Matreyek, and his wife in 2010. So Milan in this photo is squatting and holding a small figurative wooden sculpture, which is assumed to be his work. I'm not sure if you can see that. From the same collection, I just also really like this, also from the World War II time. This is Emil Milan on a rope swing, jumping into a body of water. He's a really fun person. I've learned as I've gotten to know him. So I also want to point to kind of a research tool that we use at the archives. When a new collection is proposed to us, we often look to what we already have to learn about that person and their context. So in a 2002 oral history for the archives, let's find something fun here to show you while I do this. The 2002 oral history for the archives with Edgar and Joyce Anderson, who are also wood carvers. And the Andersons also organized sort of craftspeople internationally, did a lot of work in South America. And they invited Milan to come to Honduras at one point. Let me show you an example of his work before I read this excerpt. And this is a catalog that has an illustration of one of his sort of groundbreaking works that really put him on the scene. Here where my pinky is, you can see how it's especially carved. I'll read the caption for you. It's a cutting board and a scoop, but you can see the scoop fits very neatly into the cutting board. That's some of the innovative design Milan gave the art world. So I want to read this quote because I think it's so great. Joyce Anderson says, and this is describing inviting Emil Milan to Honduras to work with them and the craftspeople there. So anyway, it was a great opportunity, so we did it. And these people, with our friend who came down, being Emil Milan, our friend never learned to speak a word of Spanish, but he was a friendly, happy person, a great big teddy bear who people loved. And by his gestures and by his showing them what he could do and what they could do, they very quickly became pole carvers, and they did some wonderful work. Pretty soon, it wasn't just the men. Pretty soon, it was their wives, and then their children, and people working day and night. And Emil, who was a bachelor and a fairly lonely person, was quite willing to spend day and night with them. He was quite willing to buy balls for the little kids to play with, and it was a very, very good setup. Okay, so already we're learning, practicing his art in the field, which is actually something I discover pretty often among veterans, is that there's examples of them doing what they do in the field, sketching, illustrating, and in this case, carving wood. All right, so photographs and printed material like this catalog are totally kind of bread and butter for the archives. But another great part of what we collect are handwritten letters and correspondence. This folder, the label reads, a handwritten letter from Emil Milan to Sandy and Phil, Juris, June 17th, 1984. And this may be one of the only handwritten documents that exists from him. Let me very carefully show it to you here. And I'll read you a line from the back here. I got some bowls, spatula, and birds in cherry and maple with raw linseed oil finish. I will have more different woods for you next week. Let me know your needs, and I'll see what I can do, if I can do them. Yeah, I'm trying to keep prices down with the cherry and maple woods. I can make a lot of pieces at a low price. So this is a very friendly, but also business-oriented letter that teaches us a lot about his market and how he arranged it. So that's great. I do want to name the people who made this donation. So it wasn't Milan himself. Milan passed away in 1985. And there's been a group of dedicated people in Pennsylvania and New Jersey organizing this material and researching Milan's life, who put this all together and donated it to the archives. So I just want to thank Craig Edelbrock, Barry Gordon, Norm Sartorius, and Phil Juris. And I know there's many others, and I think you all are on the call, which is great. So please feel free to correct the information. We'll put it in the record, provide extra information, or ask any questions about the archival process. Okay.
Josh, we do have a question, a general archival question, since we're on that topic, and
Sure.
that is, what is the most unusual item you have collected with the archives?
Well, that's a good question. And so unusual, so things that I haven't collected, but one of the interesting things that's here is the papers of Robert Smithson contain a preserved rattlesnake head in a jar, which points to Smithson's interest in the natural sciences. But it does, the question does lead to what I want to look at next year, which is a little bit unusual, but also just really beautiful. And again, these are still all in their shipping boxes. We wanted to give you that sort of raw experience. So I'm going to pull these out very carefully. Okay, so there's a lot of text, and researchers come to read things at the archives for sure, but there's also interesting materials that sort of demonstrate the actual materiality of artwork. They're very tied to that. So again, a really great label from the donors. Very helpful. This is not always the case with papers, a photo of what's inside and a caption. And let me pull these out and I'll read to you. Okay, so I'm just going to show you these mysterious objects before I tell you what they are. So they're definitely particle board. They have some pencil markings on them. They're all different kinds of shapes. There's a very small, delicate one. Okay, so what are these things? These 6 masonite templates were used for reproducing bowl and utensil forms. They appeared in both exhibitions of Milan's work and in the book Emil Milan, Mid-Century Master. He would have used them from the mid-50s until his death in 1985. So almost 4 decades of direct use by the artist to these objects. There are likely many more. And then this really poignant note, these were recovered from the deep sawdust on the floor of his barn workshop at least 25 years after his death. So again, some very intrepid, dedicated students, mentees, and people from Milan's world doing this work. So I love these. These are the exact templates used by the artist. What's very nice for us at the archives is because they're 2-dimensional and rather small, we can preserve them. We're really set up to preserve 2-dimensional paper and printed material, but this will be just fine. I've already run it by our registrar, so we're good. Thank you, Susan. And there are also the cardboard templates that are mentioned. I'll pull those out. So the archives, another collection that I like has, I forget his name, but he was a stained glass artist, and his papers contain the same kind of templates for stained glass patterns that he repeated often.
I think too, Josh, the Dorothy Levy's papers have some textile samples in them as well.
Yeah, that's true. And Joseph Cornell has miniature rugs in his papers. Yeah, I like everybody at the archives ends up looking at different collections at different points, and I think we all have our favorite items. So everyone should know there's almost 6,000 collections in the archives. Storage is really big. And a collection can be, 1 or 2 boxes like this, or 250 boxes, or even more in some cases. But I'll have to look for those textiles more. I haven't seen this.
Okay.
Okay, so mysterious yellow plastic bag. And this is the hand-drawn shapes from the templates. So I just love these things that literally give you the vocabulary, the visual vocabulary an artist used. That's an incredibly precious resource to have at the archives.
I have another question, Josh.
Sure.
When were these materials received, and how long is the typical period from arrival at the archives until taking the materials out of the receptacles they were shipped in?
Yeah, so this conversation began, I think, almost, or maybe over a little bit a year ago. I think Norm Sartorius reached out on behalf of the group, but I think I've spoken with others along the way. They arrived, I think, in April. This reboxing would have happened much sooner, but of course we all know what happened. I am in the office today, but I'm not coming in regularly. Please know that. This is sort of for this special event because of COVID. So normally this reboxing would have happened, within a couple of weeks after it arrived, especially since it's such a small collection. I would have been able to do it in an afternoon. When I have larger collections, I have to look a little down the calendar to schedule this whole process, because this is also my chance to look through things, to gather details for the accession record that will officially describe the collection. I start that, but I'll say my great colleagues, processing archivists, really fill that out and continue that work as well. So Emil Milan, wood carver, passed away in 1985. You wouldn't think Born Digital would be a big part of this collection, but in this case it is. Again, because of the work of everyone from Emil's world who put this stuff together. So, do archives collect things like CDs? Yes, we do. And here is a bunch of them. I'll show you the nice sticker that was made for this collection with Milan's portrait and some examples of his work. And let me read you this label. Well, I won't read it, but I'll summarize it. So basically, the team interviewed people from Emil Milan's life, some of whom have themselves now passed away, to gather their stories about him and then put them on these CDs that we will process, and then donated them. So this is really a research collection. While there are things from the artist himself, like the handwritten letter and the masonite templates, these things were not generated by him, and that will be noted in the record. That's just an important kind of categorization we keep in mind. Did the artists generate this themselves, or was this generated about them? And that's the case with these. So there's a lot. these go through their own process. The Born Digital preservation team at the archives is a really great, well-run machine. There's a lot of these, there's a few dozen, sorry guys, but I know you'll handle them quite well. And another thing while we're on the topic of Born Digital, and this component is not fully done. This is a DVD of what is thought to be the only known existing video of Emil Milan in his shop. You can actually watch it on YouTube. It's great. I've watched it a number of times at this point in research. So this is a DVD of that. We have found out through the team that the original, on tape recording does still exist and is still with the wife of its creator. And I've been in touch with her. Maybe you're on this call, I don't know, to get that into the archives as well. One sort of principle we always operate on is trying to have the most original document possible. So we'll hold on to this for now. It's great that it's been digitized and hope to get the original soon. I think that's an email that you're waiting on from me, so apologies, and I will get to that. Okay, I'm gonna move some stuff over here. Glad I got 2 cards.
Maybe while you're doing that, Josh, I could ask another question.
Sure.
What other collections from woodworkers and carvers do we have at the archives?
Totally. Well, oral histories, there are quite a few oral histories. The Andersons, who I mentioned, are one of those. We have almost 2,500 oral histories at the archives, and at one point, and sometimes we organize those in batches, especially when it goes with a certain funder's interest. The Andersons were interviewed under the Laitman project that was dedicated to not just wood, but to crafts in America. So I recommend searching under Laitman, L-A-I-T-M-A-N, for the oral histories of craft artists and other woodworkers. Other collections of woodworkers is a really good question that I don't know offhand, but I'm going to do that work. And if you want to at home, just key term search in our website, woodworkers, wood, and I imagine you'll make some discoveries. Okay, keep going through this. Oh, so Milan also, was also helpful in my assessing the research value, has a track record with the Smithsonian. His work is in the collection of the Renwick Museum of Craft here. It's the Renwick and Smithsonian American Art Museum are the same institution. And he did some demonstrations at the Smithsonian of woodworking in the 70s. And let's see. Okay, actually here's Mr. Phil Juris, one of the donors of this material. And here is Emil Milan. So press clippings, we get a lot of these to consider. In this case, it's ideal because the donors have pulled out the individual pages of relevance. When we get the whole issue of the newspaper, it becomes more work for us to sort of weed that out. But we'll do it. We'll do what we have to. But this is really great, so thank you for doing that.
Josh, one of our colleagues just reminded us that Wendell Castle is a woodworker who is in our collection. So if folks are interested, they could probably look him up.
Thank you. Wendell Castle, great. And I'll say too, my job, again, before COVID, involves a lot of travel normally, and I often am doing this review work on site. So I spend a lot of time in artist studios and storage units and homes doing this. This collection, was COVID friendly in a way because it had been so organized and condensed already and was easy to ship. Okay, so this is a great example of a rare catalog. These things, they're ephemeral, they often get thrown away. It's great when one with a lot of information makes its way to us. So let me just read you what this is. This is from October 1968. It's the Co-op Month Observance. And Emil Milan was a feature of the opening. It says here, he's on pages 1 and 6. Let's see. So this is great. He's listed here on page 6, but this is also great because it's an entire network of his peers that any researcher could just, these are all rabbit holes they could go down to investigate. Yeah, it's great when we get lists of names like this, lists made by interest and medium. Okay. Let's dig into this box. This is just a great photo. On the cover. So here's the great note about this. A quarterly publication of the Penn State College of Agriculture, this issue's feature article addressed the suggestion that craft had a rich history in Pennsylvania and could be a money-making industry for Pennsylvania if nurtured. Leading figures in various craft media were funded to teach statewide, and Emil Milan was their choice in wood sculpting. He traveled and taught for years under the program, and he was shown on the cover, and his work is shown in several of the photos. But strangely, he's not identified. So we have a photo of him, and thankfully we have this helpful note to confirm that it is in fact him. So even though his name doesn't appear in the document itself, future researchers will know, they'll have this great clue.
One other question, Josh.
Sure.
What happens after this unboxing process? Where do the materials go next?
Yeah, so it goes in this box, and then we've actually already done the deed of gift for this, but that would normally be the next step, but we got the deed done so we could do this event. The deed of gift is the form that makes the donation official to the archives. So normally that would be next. And then once I get the deed back and signed from the donor, our registrar takes over, and the collection finds its permanent place in storage on the shelves. And luckily, we're very lucky that all of our storage is here, both on this floor and down in the kind of concourse level of this office building we're in downtown Washington. And then they're there, and once the deed is signed and they're on the shelves, researchers are welcome to come and start studying the materials. Timing can be important. This collection is small, so it would be easy for somebody to come look at them right away. But what would happen within a year to 2 years is the processing archivist would do their work on the collection. In this case, I believe that would be our colleague Ryan Evans. And the processing archivists do all the great work of really doing detailed refoldering of everything, interleaving between things like photographs, protecting from acid erosion. They'll deal with the audiovisual material, in this case, board digital material that's here, and they will write the all-important finding aid. So the finding aid is like the table of contents for the papers, and that is kind of the difference between, it's a night and day difference for a researcher, whether they're looking at a collection before or after it's been processed. The archives has a policy of as soon as the deed is signed, researchers can look at things. I always make sure to let people know, though, if you can, wait for this to have a finding aid and be processed. But if you're ready to jump into something that's not, very fine detail organized, go for it. The only time collections are closed to researchers is in that few weeks period when the archivists are doing their work on it. Okay, so this is an interesting archival example too, and something we proposed to a lot. These are books that were owned by Emil Milan, and there's still some work for me to do on these. So here's William Zorak. So, it totally makes sense for researchers to know what the artist was reading. This is how people kind of develop insights about influence, philosophies, everything that's not evident, in this case, in the piece of wood itself that was carved. This is a nice small little library. So what I'm probably going to do, first of all, is I'm going to check every book for annotations by Milan. So if somebody who wrote a lot of marginalia, there's none in this book. So if there is heavy annotation, we'll keep the books with the papers. Otherwise, what I probably will do is make a list of these books to keep with the collection and then donate them to the Smithsonian Art Library, which is conveniently across the hall. Yeah, and they can decide from there. So maybe they'll take them. Yeah, so that's the next step with the books. We get offered books a lot. This is a really small group and easy to deal with. Sometimes we get offered like 200 volume libraries, and that's a different conversation. And this is, again, this will be noted, and this is because of the nature of this collection being not generated exclusively by the artist himself. So this was a 2014, so decades after the artist passed away, exhibition of his work, organized by the Emil Milan Research Project. It has great illustrations. Reproduction value is different in 2014, so it's nice to have these documents with his work illustrated.
Josh, I think we have time for one more question.
Please.
And it is about acquisitions. So the question is, do you have an acquisitions committee that approves the individual collection? Who makes the final decision?
So we have a curatorial team, and there are currently three full-time collectors, one specializing in African-American art history, and art, one based in New York City who collects in the New York City area, and a part-time collector, Matthew Sims, in the West Coast, who focuses on that geographic area. As the national collector, I kind of cover everything else. So again, on the road quite a bit normally. We all make the decisions in our scopes. We make the final decisions, but we don't do it, fully independently. We have curatorial meetings every 2 weeks where the curatorial team meets, and we go over, collections that are on the table for each of us. We give each other insights. You never know what one of us might know. We're all art historians on the curatorial team, which is interesting at the archives because many of our colleagues are information scientists, and that's an interesting thing. So so each curator is responsible for their realm, and much input from one another, and also from our interim director, Liza Kerwin, who has been at the archives for a while and knows so much background and has such a wealth of information. So it's just a lot of conversation, and then we decide. We do have a board, of course, at the archives, but they're not involved in the sort of nitty-gritty decisions. But we look forward to reporting, exciting collections to them every 3 months. When do we have meetings? 3 or 4 months, something like that. Yeah.
One last question. I'm going to sneak in one more, and that is about when these materials might be ready for other institutions to exhibit.
Oh, that is great. So we have a robust loaning program. Our registrar, Susan Carey, fields all those requests and manages insurance and shipping. These, I think technically if the deed is signed, it's possible. It'd be hard to identify what you want from a distance because there's not a finding aid yet. But if anyone's interested in exhibiting them, I think formally, technically it's possible because the deed is signed. So please reach out, we'll talk about it.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone for joining us for our first Unboxed Lunch. This event is one of the many ways the Archives of American Art has shifted to virtual programming while our offices in Washington and New York are closed during COVID-19. These new initiatives aren't possible with the support of friends like you. To help the archives with events like Unboxed Lunch and support the work of Josh and the entire archives team, please visit aaa.si.edu/support. And thank you everyone again. I hope you have a safe and well and warm holiday and new year, and we'll see you in 2021. Bye.
Bye, thank you.